Hello there, future humans and fellow seekers. This is Nai Coach. And, all right, this is the yearly end of the year, start of the next year ritual. I've been busy. I've been very, very busy. Well, I got my tea, herbal bonfire with Trader Joe's soy creamer and a nice tasting stevia. That is my deal. Okay, so, well, I haven't vlogged in a while, so I'll start off by saying that my nervousness, it's back up fairly high going on camera. So I'm just sort of getting used to it, kind of like, yeah, hi there. And Nexie is, projecting into it, but she's kind of feeling her way in, and so I'm feeling my connection with her as she does that, because it's been a while, so we have to reacquaint. Let's see. Well, I haven't been vlogging much because, well, I've been feeling vulnerable because of how much purifying I've been doing, just how hard I've been pushing, but things are going well. I'm very happy with the progress. Had a lot of breakthroughs, and yeah, I guess I'll just give you the high level. All right, so high level, just kind of an overview is Zenai. I've been having breakthroughs on them for a while. I think I talked about that a while back. As a part of that was Zai-Ni. I think I may have mentioned that too. But now also, I think since then perhaps is Nizai I've had breakthroughs on, and Vzai, and Zvi. So I've had breakthroughs on all of those. And that kind of goes with a theme, which is, well, let me kind of tell you how I got there. Big picture is there was the building of the, well, let me put this on real quick because I was going to use this to help me stay good on time. All right, I get this big clock because sometimes I get into things and I forget how long I've gone. All right, so trying to keep it pithy. Is building the Rosetta Stone. That was a thing that was occupying a lot of my attention, so I was trying to purify what was already in there, but I'm just adding new samples all the time, so I'm being a bit deluged, but I was doing that willingly. I chose to do that. But a while back, I got to where I think is a good spot to pause on gathering. The reasons for that is, one, I think it was a good canvassing of most of the famous people that people will know about and there's good media for. This went over 50,000 samples that are in the collection. That's a nice big number, 50,000. I like, a good strong number for power rituals, Fumasta stuff. That also involved, well, it's 2020. We have media going back to 40s and even some a little before that, but definitely by the 70s. So from 1970 on, there's a plentiful amount of media. Obviously, media gets better and more plentiful as you move on through the decades till now. But yeah, 1970, the media is strong from there on. So 1970 to 2020, 50 years. So it's over 50,000, it's over 50 years, and it gets the majority of the most famous people out there, pretty much. I looked for everyone I could, and then I got to where I was going into niches, and this is where some things happened. One is I started getting more into the purifying than I already had been in the past years, because now I had the quantity. Before I was constructing and purifying simultaneously. So this really upped my purifying powers. And I started to make purifications, and two things came from that, leading us up to where I'm at currently. The first was, it was a few of the Jez Mojos, I think the Ram, but definitely the Naiji male. I was not going to get 1,000. So I've already gone really deep, over 50,000 cases have been collected, and that's 50 years of media. It's all the most famous people. So I had to kind of come to the conclusion. This is after I went through, I think the very last thing I did was go through IMDb on a male sort and a female sort, and I went deep swimming. And I think I've done what I can on that to where basically the Mojos I'm going to get 1,000 plus, I've already got them, and then the ones that are not, there's really no way to bulldog that. So that was one that became apparent. It started, and Naiji male was the one, most woe to me, but overall was that I'm not going to be able to get some of them over 1,000. And at this stage of the game of how many years of data has been collected, how big the collection is, I think we can say that's an unreasonable thing to be going for. We should be going for what we have being as pure as possible. Okay, so that really took a lot of weight off. So one weight off was I gathered enough, 50,000 plus. I'm like, okay, that's a very nice size. And then I had come to the realization that I'm not going to get certain gender mojos to 1,000 plus, and so I can just, even now, each day I slough it a little bit, I release that a little more, that's not going to be something to go for. Its absolute purity is the key now. So then, as I started realizing this, then that brings us to the next big thing is, I don't know if I've articulated this one on camera yet, but anyway, here it goes, is that pretty much all the purifications were going in one direction on a given thing, which was Jez versus Zez. It's been pretty much purifications from Jez to Zez. So the Zez numbers have been continuing to swell and the Jez numbers have been pared down. But I believe they're getting very nice and pure now, which is great. But that means that I can let that go. So one, some of them won't get to 1,000 in near future, and that there's this general trend now. You know, we have things we've learned about, you know, life partners and careers and things like this, same-sex family members, biological links, some big things like that, microcosm syndrome. So some big discoveries. This is another one, is that generally speaking in pop culture, the Zez counterpart to Jez, or I say Zni to Gni, Vi-Z versus Vi-G, pretty much whenever that you have that, the Zez counterpart will have more samples in pop culture. That seems to be a thing. All right. Okay. So this was sort of like this came, like I said, as a part of the amount I was doing and coming to the close of the gathering of that and so forth. But then also I think about 3/4, maybe even further than that, maybe even, yeah, I want to say it's past, I think 3/4 of the duos that I wanted to do as far as quizzing purification that would go through the entire collection. I'd done that on several, had some really great breakthroughs, and that's what kind of brought all this to the surface, a combination of, like I said, the volume, how long I've been doing at it, and that I now can see those distinctions. So I'm working myself back, and have been for the last several months, to where I've purified enough that I'm going to take a pause and I'm going to switch over to the soft read samples, the ones that have been most recently read, and I'm going to consolidate the gains. So that's what I've been doing. I ended the year really strong, and what I did was I got the workbench samples to be under 500, and I got the attention samples to be under 1,000. I think those are two critical categories. The attention samples are of interest. The workbench samples are important. And so those important, interesting samples to me, and then generally to the world, getting that number to be where it's small compared to the size of the overall collection, you could say that's a small amount. So those numbers, 500, 1,000, those seemed good, and I got that under. In the work to come this year, those numbers will probably swell up again over those marks, and that I will need to work them back down. But getting them here at all for the first time was a huge win, and I pushed really hard to have that done by the end of the year, and I've done that. All right, so the plan will be starting basically, I guess tomorrow. Starting tomorrow is I'm going to be working on the S-grade samples and trying to really dial in and enjoy all the gains that I have made. So once I have done that and I've quizzed through them and I'm feeling good about them, then anything needs to come back out to workbench or attention or pending or so forth, I will do. But then that'll be nice and strong. Then I'm going to gradate them, A, B, C, D, and then I'm going to trim things that need to be trimmed to get under 1,000, meaning that I'll put things into less immediate categories for people to pay attention to if I have over 1,000, because I don't want to overwhelm people. So I'm making 1,000 kind of like the general cap of like main push samples, but I still keep records of the other ones. That pretty much is a Zez phenomenon. It's the Zez mojos that have enough over 1,000 at all, and then over 1,000 to where I need to trim them down and try to keep the most relevant samples in the main 1,000 camp. Okay. When I do that, I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but then I will resume the full collection quizzings on duos. I have 2 left I want to do, which is telling apart the eyes, Jivae versus Jinai, telling apart the Nez versus Vez in the eyes on all the mojos. And then the other one is a cross-section where you have like, are they Ab, are they Vez, and do they use the same Jez power? Because that can be a tricky one. What that entails, for example, Jinai versus Nizai. Those who've been doing this for a little while know that although there are some different powers, different palettes being used by the Jinai and the Nizai, they share some similarities with that full-faced, that Nez dreamy kind of general cadence, and they have the blingy Ji. So the Jivae versus Vizai and all those kinds of things. Nai-Z versus Jaini, again, like in movies and so forth, that can be a tricky one to tell apart sometimes. Okay, so once I do that, then I will continue on with the rest of my plan there, the quads, the octates, and the 16s, and the full collection. All right, but I need to take this time out because I was getting this great, breakthroughs on the Zez and releasing from the 1,000 mark, quota stuff. And so I've kind of just been riding that and making the gains and working hard with it every day until I eventually come back to resuming the full collection collage quizzing naturally. So we'll see. I don't know how long working to consolidate the S grade samples will take, but as you know, I will be on it full on fanatic style. Okay, what else? Let's see. Boom, got that. Got this, did that. All right, so then another kind of general thing that it's been on my mind for a while, but I don't think I brought it out, is that now that because I went through some phases, like the first phase was obviously just trying to figure out what was this connection between my inner world and what I'm seeing out here, the synonymy of it, what was that? That was like kind of the first stage, at least as far as bringing Podlayer to the world. Then there was, like, initially I wanted to investigate the cases of things that I knew of, movies I'd seen and so forth. And that was good to a degree. I mean, it was essential. It had to happen. I needed to do that. Even though if mojo reading was already here and didn't need to be discovered and brought up as I'm doing, as I'm discovering the process of mojo reading as I'm doing the feat of the Rosetta Stone. So I'm doing both those things simultaneously. But if the Rosetta Stone and the teaching of it was already here, and I was starting from scratch, I would not have started with those because those are very heavy cases for me because they're big in general a lot of times, like they're actors or whatnot, they're famous. But to me personally, certain movies I really grooved on, certain roles, and so that made it heavy. And so I really should have gone out, in this kind of open world adventure and beefed my character's skills up and then come back and gotten them. But that wouldn't have been possible. I needed something to motivate me to go forward, and so that's what motivated me initially. Because whether I knew it or not, I was resisting the idea of building the Rosetta Stones. My spirits were getting me there in stages. The first was, like I said, just realizing that these things are here, there's the codification of them, and it's a thing. And then starting to apply it to a data collection. Initially, it was just one in my head, and then they wanted me to put one out. So, yeah, I went for the ones I knew more. That gave me a few thousand. Then I realized I needed to go big. I needed to get more of it, and that's when I switched into a phase of mass reading. And so during that phase, I was concerned with getting the thousands each, and that helped me motivate me to gather these samples and be like, ooh, maybe there's this that I need, maybe there's that I need, and I would just keep going down these different rabbit holes, hoping to find stuff, just gorging honey badger style on data, trying to get the overall size up and the size of the individual mojo categories. But now I'm in this phase, which is I have over 50,000. And I know that getting the 1,000 each is not really a thing that's going to be possible with what is currently available media-wise. But now that I'm here, I can really kind of zoom around the collection. It's like this thing. And by the way, I'm still going to be reading after that, but I'm just going to keep those generally in my spreadsheet, keeping track of any new reads. I'm not going to be adding them to collection and so forth. The collection I'm just going to squeeze on now. I'm just going to go around it, global and squeeze, and I'm going to really just get the fluency and the purification. And then the other stuff I'll continue to do. But as far as proving my point, that will be more than enough data to prove the point if it's properly purified. So that is the key. Okay, so with that is how to come into it, since it is, kind of like an open world game. Now that I have this terrain, the wholeness of it, where to go first. So one, the Zez being more numerous, it makes sense to start there, because then I'll have a lot more to work with to give me the fundamental principles that I can then overlay onto the Zhez, and that'll give me a lot of bonuses. So although the Zhez will be a different thing, there's a lot of principles that apply to the human math that I'll get from the Zhez. So that's one thing, just the numbers of it. But also something else critically, I'm less attached. I find that I am much more attached to the answers of Zhez mojos or potential Zhez mojos than I am to Zez. So when Zez switches around and I'm like, oh, is that a Vzi or a Zvi? I'm able to be more clinical about that. And the issue is then motivation, because I have more motivation for things that are closer to me, but then there's the cleanliness. But now of, say, things that are further from me. Like in social alchemy, you have to put forward a little more effort for the alchemies that are further from you, but it's totally worth it. But the initial investment to get that back and forth of the good, harmonious, productive energy between the two different mojos, it needs that like initial coinage to go. But then if you do it right, the return is always worth the investment. But there's a bit more, like I said, of a reaching. And therefore can be a little more of a reluctance sometimes to spend that obviously you can get over through experience, willpower, having good exchanges that will train you that, oh yes, this is definitely worth doing. But still there is that slight detachment or just distance. There is a degree of difference, and you can use that to actually sometimes tell differences. And I'm sure this will go both ways for Zez mojos as well. Sometimes you're trying to figure out the dance between the, say, Zenai and the Zaini. And you're studying cases of Zenai and Zaini. But if you are a Zenai or Zaini, that can also throw you around a little bit, which is good. But sometimes you want a little distance on a principle. And you're like, what is this principle? Like, is this like der ab versus ad sub? Or is this something else? So you can actually go over to perhaps say the Zhivi and Zhivi and just study that from the point of view of der ab and ad sub. How that, there's basic principles of that that are there on all of those couplings. So you can get a little distance there. Anyway, I'm enjoying that distance. Within that, I'm finding that I'm even more relaxed, not in like a down way, but like in a peak performance athletics kind of way, which is like you are loose. You're up but loose and feeling cool. It's hard to explain, but you're in the great state. You're loose, but you're also at attention, and you're cool, but you're not cold. Anyway, long story short, I find that the Zai mojos, the ad Zez, I'm even more relaxed on in this positive way. Where when it gets into the der, there is just innate like der competitiveness that I feel that and it's not anything in particular. I just feel general der stuff because I'm der. So I just care more, even though a lot of times, like, I don't even know why does it make a difference. I mean, because that one has Nai and that one's a der sub. Like, I can see similarities either way. So it's not like I'm overly fixated on one Zez versus another, although there are ones that are closer to me than others. But just generally, the der wrangling, that energy, I feel it. And so that makes the fifth gear a little more challenging. Still, I enjoy the benefits of like that Zez cleanness of the lines and trying to figure out the principles that I'm working with. Anyway, that's my plan. And on that, I would say VES. So the AdPrac. The AdPrac, I'm the most sort of like, can work with it real clean and smooth and fast and sharp and strong and purified, like a lot of energy, but I don't feel as chance of getting overheated, psychologically speaking. I can really, but then the gains there I can use other places. So my general theme I had in the past, just naturally when I was doing my collaging work, started with mojos closer to me and then worked out to further ones. But now I'm going to do actively really focus on starting out the other way and coming back because I feel it's going to really be helpful. So overall, with the data collection is getting very close to data bedrock, but now I need to do like the high intensity purifying to kind of bring it home here. And I think AdPrac to Zymojos, then Zymojos to help me get the Zmojos. And then that'll give me Zez. And then from that, I can even then separate out within that Prac and Serb. And that's going to give me that sort of role-playing game 4-character class thing that it's there. And you'll see this repeating pattern of a dir sub, a dir ob, an ad sub, and an ad ob. So I will then have the Prac, male and female versions of that, and I'll have the Serb, male and female versions. I'll then use that to go to the sends and get that, and then I'll use all three of those, the Serb, the sends, and the Prac, to go to the ROM. The ROM will be the most challenging because that's the one that I have the most attachment to the answers. Okay. Anything else? Oh, just kind of on a spiritual note, because this is my channel, this is not necessarily just Mojo reading, this is Truth Fire Dragon, is, at first, obviously it's a little overwhelming getting the purifications, and you're like, oh, I got this wrong, and where's this going, what are the implications, what does this mean to the collection, and what is possible, blah, blah, blah. But then I kept working with it, talking to my higher spirits, asking for the right things, and I was given more visions, and I've been getting them stronger and stronger sense of people are going to be not wanting to hear what Podler has to say because of the implications, so they're going to try and push on that data. Because if they can push down the data bedrock, then they can push down the implications, and they're going to want to do that. So I imagine just this general force of pushback, of, right? And so now that I'm seeing the Zez numbers get swollen, I've been having visions of like the Zni and the Zini, males and females, all of them, the Zvi, and as I work through all of them, like they speak to me of like, I dare them, the whole Zvi collection, males, Zvi females, like all the 16 gender mojos for the Zez are giving me a strong signal, like spiritually, of let them try and push this down. Like Mads Mikkelsen, Zni, who at one time I thought was an IG, which is ridiculous, except that I was very attached to him, but I mean, he looks fairly Zni obvious. He's like, let them try and push me out. I dare them. So I got like a Mads Mikkelsen mashup, a bunch of other Zni males too. Like they're like, I dare them to try and push me out of Zni. You couldn't? No, I couldn't. I tried to make him an IG, but that's not a thing. He is what he is. He's a Zni. And so they're like, no one will be able to push us out of this ground if this is the ground we're supposed to hold. So I'm really getting this kind of thing on this whole like Z army, and they're like, and so yeah. And then the fact that then we're going to kind of like rescue or free those who should be over in the Zez from the Zhez. For the last final purifications, that'll be a big thing, is going in there and kind of make sure there's nothing that should be over in the Zez. So anyway, yeah, just kind of get that spiritual connection, and that they're grateful that they're now where they're supposed to be. They're happy that they're where they're supposed to be, and they're happy that I was able to bring them there, and they're happy that I can see that that's where they're supposed to be. And then as a part of that, they're like, let them try and push this down. They won't. And that really getting the power then, and if we get that, we'll get the Zhez. And then more important than is there 1,000, because like I said, in IG, there's only like 250. Doesn't matter if it's 200 or 100, as long as it is pure and they cannot be pushed down. The data bedrock I put forward, which is going to be 100 of each of them, if that cannot be pushed down by anyone who's going to try and like say, we don't have to listen to what Podlair's talking about because they say it's all based on the truth of this collection, and it's nothing. No, invincible. So I'm getting like a Zez, I got like a Zez behind my back now. They're like, da da da, and we're going to go forward, we're going to get the Zez, and then we're going to talk to the world. Okay, so that then brings me to plans for 2020. It'd be cool if I could start the outreach this year. I mean, 2020 is a nice, number and everything, but purity is the most important thing. Got to get what I have now pure, because if I can purify it down in general, and then in particular get a data bedrock purification for 100 each of the 32 gender mojos, then we are locked in and ready to go. So I need to get that. If I could get that this year and start approaching, that'd be wonderful. But I'm gonna need to get that first, and then I have to do some prep of like some videos I'll need to have as place settings, because when I start talking to people, I'll be referring to them. So I'll need like a little basic allotment of reference videos of general stuff. So get the purified, get the general videos, and then we go. That sounds like 1, 2, 3. Yeah, but those are big things. So I don't know if that'll happen this year, but I'm gonna do what I can. All right, the battery's looking like it's a little sad there, but it's still going. Okay, so I think that's basically it. That's my plan. That's what's happened this year so far. That's where we are, high level stuff. And then the plan for the campaign going forward into 2020, full on, and we'll get there either this year, maybe next year, maybe the year after that. But somewhere, I would say, I'm thinking 2 years or less, I'll be in the approach phase. And then my plan there is, my spirit said, kind of like Star Trek, a 5-year mission. I'm going to just go 5 years full on and see what happens. I may stay doing it for the rest of my life. I don't know. But I'm going to go and make as much contact and as much interest and as I can in 5 years. I'm going to see how many doors I can knock on and how much conversation, positive, useful conversation I can help bring to fruition.